There are a lot of positive news stories about Bitcoin and crypto, but the price isn't really reflecting that yet. After China made another move here, even though Elon actually had a positive outlook on the whole thing, the price dropped, and now we're all curious to see if it can recover with all this news. Because now a lot of money is coming into the market. Hey, welcome to Crypto Owl. Very exciting news about Bitcoin. And here's a quick summary of everything that's going on, not just with Bitcoin, but also with cryptocurrencies in general. Let's take a quick look at the market, shall we? And we can see that Bitcoin is currently hovering around $88,700. We dropped down to as low as $83,800 yesterday, Monday, and even fell to $80,600 on Friday the 21st. Which, of course, was also pretty intense, but let's talk about what's happened over the last few days. And it certainly wasn't nice to see, especially since we actually had some positive news because Elon Musk said that you can't regulate Bitcoin since Bitcoin is energy. And energy is a true currency, or rather, a currency that can't be contained. So he says here that Bitcoin is a fundamental currency based on energy. And energy is a true currency. And later on, he also said that you can't regulate or restrict energy. You can't control what happens with it. And shortly after that, the big shock came, which is also why the price dropped so sharply. Namely, China spoke up once again. The Chinese central bank reaffirmed the crypto ban and warned that it will intensify its crackdown on stablecoins. And of course, that's what caused prices to drop so sharply, especially considering that the US will rely heavily on stablecoins because they've realized that when you invest in stablecoins, you're essentially buying in the background US government bonds. At the very least, you can also make this a requirement for stablecoin providers. Tether will soon be launching a new product that focuses even more on US government bonds. It will be very interesting to see how this all plays out. And China is about to take stricter action against stablecoins, or rather, will tighten measures against stablecoins, even though they have their own CBDC project, meaning their own central bank digital currency. So we have to be honest, there are a few topics here that just don't really fit together. But all of this led to, and hold on tight, this is a crazy number, 140 billion in the crypto market within 4 hours. We're wiped out. Of course, those were mostly long positions that got liquidated when the price dropped so sharply, no question about it. But we can also see on the daily chart right now, yes, we first have to recover this candle and then hope that we can head back toward 100,000. At the moment, we're still a bit short. There are still a few levels we need to climb. A few is putting it mildly, $11,300 or 12.84% depending on where exactly you measure it. So it's pretty crazy. Bitcoin has to rise almost 13% for us to see $100,000 again and hopefully have a nice year-end close. On the Bitcoin chart, the whole thing remains very exciting. You can get additional bonus money by transferring your assets to OKX. You have until the 12th. December is when the OKX transfer days take place. Up to $1,000 in Bitcoin if you transfer or deposit cryptocurrencies to OKX. You can simply buy cryptocurrencies here in various currencies, for example, just in euros. The whole thing works with different payment providers, for example, PayPal, credit card, Google Pay, Apple Pay, and then you can very easily here buy one of their many cryptocurrencies easily with simple conversion. But of course, you can also just trade normally here, for example, very easily in euros or, of course, in dollars as well. You can do it very easily here. Trade, buy, and of course also sell cryptocurrencies and take profits. Take advantage of the transfer days until the 12th December to earn a bonus of up to 1,000 euros in Bitcoin. The link for that is in the video description or in the pinned comment. Extremely bullish news. Why? How come? Let's take a look at it right now. The trend is getting better and better in this regard. And, hold on tight, Vanguard, who were long against Bitcoin and crypto, are now allowing, well, they have assets under management of $11 trillion. And starting tomorrow, in other words, today, the 2nd December, finally giving their clients access to Bitcoin ETFs. According to Bloomberg, and this news has spread very well and probably also led to, if we look at the hourly chart again here, that in the last few hours, this should be about here, the chart has continued to rise in the last few hours. Of course, there is more news as well, but this alone is extremely positive when you see that Vanguard is now allowing its clients to invest in Bitcoin ETFs. This is from Bitcoin Magazine. Others have also reported that Ethereum ETFs are also possible. We'll take another look at the ETFs in a moment because there are also some interesting new figures. And something else interesting. In Switzerland, it is now possible to pay with Bitcoin and supposedly also with other cryptocurrencies at the Swiss Spar Group. You might know Spar in Germany as well. It's a small store where you can shop, though maybe not so much with current grocery prices, but in Switzerland, it's now possible because they're huge in the supermarket sector there, as people say. I don't even know, are they that common in Germany? For example, I don't think I know a single Spar store. I couldn't say off the top of my head where one would be. But in Switzerland, it's apparently a larger chain. And with their new app, they allow crypto and Bitcoin payments. This is all very positive and once again shows that adoption, or rather opportunities for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, are there. Of course, what's interesting is what happens if the price keeps falling. And there is more and more criticism of Michael Saylor, especially when the price drops. Someone wrote a really long post about this. It also got a lot of clicks, as we can see here. In total, 2.6 million times. That's why it's so interesting. I'm personally not familiar with this person, but he has 82,000 followers. But the number of clicks is what made me want to talk about it and take a closer look at the whole thing. So he said that the impossible has just happened. Because strategy holds so much in Bitcoin, what always can happen when the price drops has now happened. They are holding Bitcoin worth 55.9 billion US dollars. The market capitalization is $75.7 billion, and Wall Street values the company at minus $10.2 billion because, of course, it has invested in Bitcoin. $10.2 billion because it has, of course, invested in Bitcoin. And it's interesting that the whole thing, well, he says this is not a joke, it's really true. And the shares are at risk of falling further, but they keep selling more shares. The share price actually doesn't care whether more are being sold here or not. What's interesting is simply that more capital is being raised here to invest in Bitcoin. The person who wrote the X post also included a date when they suspect that the company's strategy will collapse because of their Bitcoin reserves. Specifically, they said January 15th. January 2026 marked the date the reckoning has begun. He thinks that the whole thing will fail around that time. Yes, and of course that caused quite a stir. And many people said, yeah, maybe it's something to think about if the Bitcoin price keeps falling. Of course, also because of things like China and so on, which you can't predict or influence in advance. The big question, of course, is how long can MicroStrategy hold out? Right now, they're still in the black, but they just say, we don't care, it's Monday, we're buying. Yesterday, they bought again. Specifically, 130 Bitcoin worth 11.69 million. We can see that it's become a bit less. If we take a closer look at the list, oh wow, it's really small. 130 Bitcoin all the way up to the 30th November, so this was all bought during that period. Before that, they bought 8,178 Bitcoin. Before that, 487, 397, 390, 168, 220. And here, Waldmar, a situation where they bought 0. Otherwise, they always announced on Mondays each week that they had bought Bitcoin. The smallest purchase was then announced on the 1st of April with 32 Bitcoin, but otherwise they keep buying steadily here. And all of this naturally leads to the dependency on Bitcoin becoming increasingly important for the company's strategy. So if the price of Bitcoin falls, strategy also has problems and has to explain that to everyone. But overall, you could say in the long run, Bitcoin can really only increase in value. Let's remember what Elon Musk said at the beginning of the video. Bitcoin is energy, and energy is a true currency. We have every reason to be very curious. Now that Vanguard is allowing customers to invest in the Bitcoin ETF and also in crypto ETFs starting today, there are some interesting numbers. Namely this. Retail investors hold a large portion of the Bitcoin spot ETF. But this is now slowly starting to decline a bit. At this point, you could almost say the bar is at 70. It's a bit difficult to say, but it's somewhere between 25 and 28% on this bar. Many people are saying it's 25%. I can imagine that, according to this bar, it's actually a bit more, because you can assume it's roughly at 70 here. But let's go with what's been written. 25% of all Bitcoin ETF investors are institutional. And that number has increased. compared to 2024. So we should be very, very curious to see how this develops further, because we can see that more and more opportunities are emerging to invest in Bitcoin ETFs, for example, through Vanguard. But more will follow, and we will still see the numbers for the ETFs. Namely, on December 1st, and this is interesting, we saw 8.5 million flowing in, but with IBIT, meaning the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF, a lot of money flowed out. On the other hand, the Fidelity ETF gained a lot. And there were also gains for ARK Invest. So it's very interesting to see that some money flowed out of IBIT, even though, according to the ratings, which many people invest in these ETFs as they offer the best conditions. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how this all develops. We'll continue to see more figures as we go along. And let's remember, the 27th, that was Thanksgiving, so there was no trading. And on the 28th, there was a slight trend of more investments being made, even though IBIT suffered significant losses. So it's always very interesting to keep an eye on these ETF numbers. And it's especially interesting that the BlackRock ETF is currently posting losses, or rather, that many people might be reallocating their money or cashing out, perhaps because they're seeing the falling Bitcoin prices. And these falling Bitcoin prices, yes, they're causing many people to say, maybe I've made some profits. Or at least I'll take my chips off the table now and say that's enough for me. Unfortunately, that's still happening. Now, something else interesting, namely Bank of America. They are now recommending to their wealth management clients now a Bitcoin and crypto allocation, meaning they recommend investing 4% of their entire portfolio in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. That's wild. And just imagine if you had heard about this whole topic 5 years ago. So just think about it. 5 years ago, if you had gone to your bank, in this case Bank of America, and they had said, listen, if you're investing, go for stocks, precious metals, but also consider putting 4% into Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, then you'll be well positioned. And now, 5 years later, just look at where the prices were back then. Everyone would have been really happy about that. And classifying Bitcoin as energy, you can do that, and it's definitely a positive statement for Bitcoin. But of course, the rarity factor of Bitcoin, namely that there are only 21 million of them, is also very, very interesting. Because as I already mentioned in the last news video about Bitcoin, a huge gold deposit has been found, probably the largest gold deposit in the world. At least that's what they said. And now it has come out that 11 million tons of gold, silver, copper, and zinc have been discovered in Saudi Arabia. So we just have to acknowledge that as much gold, silver, and so on can still be extracted from the earth. And let's also remember what Elon Musk is planning, to bring gold from Mars, because it's suspected that there are large gold deposits there as well. Yes, and when it comes to Bitcoin, you simply have to say there are only 21 million Bitcoins in existence. That means Bitcoin is the most limited resource on Earth. At least if you disregard gemstones, although has anyone actually counted how many gemstones there are? Does anyone know how many gemstones are still in the mountains, or rather in the earth? These are all such topics where people say, yes, it's limited, everything's fine, but I stand by it. With Bitcoin, at least we know how much there is, who holds it, and what the current distribution looks like. In this sense, very interesting news, actually quite positive. And we hope that all of this will eventually be reflected more positively in the charts. The year isn't over yet. We're very likely to see another interest rate cut mid-December. And if that happens, we can be very curious to see whether the prices will react positively again, and hopefully very positively. A New Year's with a Bitcoin price over $100,000, I think that's something we would all wish for. With that in mind, I hope you were able to take something away from this, and I want to thank you for watching. See you in the next video.